Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Anfield Review podcast, guys. It is match day. Liverpool travel to the Stadium of Light to the northeast tonight to take on Sunderland in what is now a must-win game after, obviously, Manchester United dropped points last night. No haircut for the man, the United Strand man. Be careful how you say that. You don't want to get sued by Mark Goldbridge. And, of course, Chelsea also dropping points with Cole Palmer rather hilariously missing an open goal from about a yard out. But look, it is a big game tonight, a huge game tonight. We'll look ahead to the game tonight. We'll also talk a bit for the news around the club as well. We've got some bits and pieces I want to pick up out of the presser from yesterday. Look, I think there's a couple of things. And I want to start off by talking about the whole Calvin Ramsey situation. Look, I don't think anyone in here is coming on and pretending that Calvin Ramsey is the greatest right back in the world or is the best right back in the club. And all these people who are trying to justify what Arne Slot said yesterday about young Calvin Ramsey are using the excuse, oh, he was rubbish at Wigan, he didn't do it here, he was rubbish there, whatever. Look, I don't think anyone has got an issue with him not being played because he perhaps isn't up to the standard required for Liverpool. What the issue is with how Arne Slot went about what he said. That is where the issue is. It's not the issue with not playing him, which I think a lot of these slot-in, slot-ite muppets who will defend whatever the manager says. You know, I think even if the manager came out and slagged off Bill Shankly, slagged off Paisley, slagged off Fagan, slagged off Kenny Dalglish, and took the mickey out of the club, would still find a way to defend him because it's not Liverpool to have a go at the manager. Well, if he's not doing his job, yes, it is. If he's actually showing gross misconduct and slagging off one of his employees, then that is not being very Liverpool, is it? You know, but hey, look, what we don't let's not let the truth get in the way of arse-licking the manager, which some people seem to want to do. The comments that he made yesterday, as regards Calvin Ramsey, look, they were out of order. They were 110% out of order. You know, there are better ways to go about, the message that he wanted to give. There is a lot better ways of doing this. This is not the first young player either to feel like he is being kind of forced out, been made to look, and feel not valued at the club. And that goes against everything this club stands for. This club was built on bringing through young talent, through using our academy. And, I think there's a lot of young players will be looking today and saying, if Arne Slot is genuinely staying at this football club for the year or even for longer term, then I want to get out of this club because I've got no future at this club. I really haven't got any future at this club because Slot will not use young players. He's proven that a number of times. He doesn't trust them. He doesn't use them. He doesn't like them. I don't know what it is. He just doesn't want young English players in his team. I don't know why. But look, let's look at what he said about Calvin Ramsey. He basically took a young footballer like Calvin Ramsey and threw him under the bus. That's what he did. Basically coming out and saying that he isn't good enough to play for the team. Basically saying that, that he's chosen other players all season. He will continue to do that because Ramsey isn't up to the standard that he wants. There are better ways to... How is Calvin Ramsey feeling hearing that? Honestly, those of you defending Arne Slot and what he said, how does Calvin Ramsey as a young player feel hearing his manager basically saying, you ain't good enough, son? How does he feel? Think about that for a second. All of you, you want to use the Diogo Jota excuse for why we're not playing well, players are, whatever. Let's just use that same empathetic, way of arguing situations. You can't have it both ways, guys. You cannot have it both ways. How does that Calvin Ramsey feel? There are better ways to do what he did yesterday. There are much better ways of saying what he said yesterday that don't make a player feel like he is worthless. And what annoys me even more is you've got some big, massive accounts on YouTube who are basically defending the manager and defending him slagging off one of our players. Big accounts that realistically, to me, lost all credibility yesterday with their defence of this manager, as they have most of the season, to be honest with you. These big accounts who are so far up the club's arse because they're terrified of losing access to the players, terrified of losing their access to the club legends because, you know what, they wouldn't dare question the club or question what the club's doing. Of course they wouldn't, because they're fucking cowards, the lot of them. Let me know your thoughts on that. There was also another comment that was made in the press conference yesterday, which I think kind of shows the wider issues at the football club beyond Arne Slot. Slot said this: "When I arrived here, we could only sign Chiesa, and that was after a Europa League season. I'm completely aware of that," which, you know, is not great for Chiesa. But look, that's not what Richard Hughes said. Richard Hughes at the time said that it was something along the lines of, the reason we're not making multiple signings is because we're currently going through a process of evaluating the squad, which was not this. So my question is, who's telling the truth? Arne Slot or Richard Hughes? Where's the truth in that? And does this show a division within the sporting director and the manager in what they think? You know, there were other things that came out yesterday. There were other things that came out yesterday that were really, really interesting for me. One of the lines he said in the middle of one of his comments was, when the reasons come out for this, perhaps more will be, you know, evident as to why this season's gone as it has. So does that say that maybe something isn't right at the top? That maybe there is a disconnect between Michael Edwards, Richard Hughes and the manager? You know, there is an issue beyond Arne Slot. You know, and look, I'm not pretending Slot is the only issue at this club. Slot is a massive part of what is wrong at Liverpool Football Club. I get that. I understand that. And he does need to be sacked. But, you know, Thomas Frank's been sacked this morning. Let's hope Xabi Alonso doesn't go to Spurs and we lose out on him because we're keeping hold of a Dutch manager that is just useless. I mean, Spurs, if you want Arne Slot, take him. But look, the situation is this. There's clearly something wrong above Slot in terms of player acquisition, in terms of squad building, you know, in terms of bringing in players. Look at the January transfer window, how that all fell apart, the Mark Gahey deal, how that fell apart. There are a lot of issues beyond Arne Slot, and I don't think that just sacking the manager, which, yes, will be a step forward, is going to solve all the issues at this club by any stretch of the imagination going forward into next season. I really, really don't. Right, turning our thoughts to tonight against Sunderland. Sunderland, of course, will be without their talismanic captain, the man who has been a massive part of what they have done this season. Granit Xhaka is out for at least another couple of weeks. Their predicted lineup is meant to be something like this. Rufs in goal is a very, very good goalkeeper. Mukelele, Ballard, Alderete and Mandava. Mandava is a very good attacking left fullback. Diarra and Siddiqui will be the holding two. It's the Diarra replacing Xhaka. Then Hume on the right, who is a defensive-minded player. Angulo and Taibi, who is a very attacking-minded player. And Brobby, who was lucky to stay on the park on Saturday against Arsenal up top. Their left side is quite threatening, which is a bit of a worry considering our right-back situation at the moment with no fit right-backs. Well, we have got a fit right-back, but the manager won't use him. There we go. But look, that I think will be somewhere around their lineup. The only thing I could perhaps see is that Hume doesn't start and they bring in someone more attacking on the right-hand side. Look, I think there's been a lot of rubbish spoken about the game tonight in terms of the fact that, you know, people saying, oh, Sunderland might send blood and might come out and attack Sunderland, and then, the situation is that basically Liverpool will be able to play a lot easier against them. Regis Lebris, who is their manager, is not that stupid. He isn't that stupid. He will not be thinking like that. He will be thinking, right, how do I keep this tight? How do I keep this solid at the back? How do I make sure that I do what I did against Arsenal and Manchester City, against Liverpool? That's what he will be thinking tonight. He ain't stupid. Okay, let's get that clear. And they will play a very solid mid to low block against us to frustrate us and hit us on the break. That's how they will play tonight, guys. So let's not get into this. They're going to go toe-to-toe with us. Rubbish that some people were spouting yesterday. It ain't going to happen. As for predicted lineups, I think Liverpool may line up something like this. Alisson in goal. Back four of Endo, Konate, Van Dijk and Kerkez. Although I would be inclined to start Robertson there for a bit of leadership and a bit of veteran presence at the back and give Kerkez a rest. Although Robertson, I think, will likely start and captain the cup team on Saturday, which I think will be very, very interesting how he lines up on Saturday. We'll talk more about that closer to the time. Gravenberch and Jones in midfield. I think he might go with Jones tonight, as much as there has been that uncertainty around Curtis and his future at the club, because of the fact that McAllister's form it ain't great. It ain't great at the moment. It really isn't. he's not played well this season at all. And, he has struggled. And I think he may be on the bench tonight. Then you've got a front three, I think, will be Salah, Wirtz and Gakpo. I've seen some people saying, well, Wirtz might start left and, bring McAllister in. I genuinely don't see him dropping Cody Gakpo. He seems to have a love affair with Cody Gakpo for whatever reason. I can't see Cody Gakpo not playing tonight, if I'm being honest. Salah on the right. Look, Salah was pretty awful in the last game. Has not been great this season. But there's no one else. Well, there is, but he won't play him. So he won't play Chiesa. He won't play Ngamoa. So what's the point in even talking about it? And then obviously Ekitike up top. Subs tonight, I think, will be Chiesa, McAllister, Mamlashvili and Woodman. 2 goalkeepers on the bench again. Robertson, Nioni, Ngamoa, Ramsey and Nallo. Ramsey obviously good enough for the bench, but not good enough to start, which does kind of make you think why. Because if, let's say, Endo gets injured in the first 2 minutes, then he's going to have to bring on somebody. Probably McAllister and shift Jones to right back, something like that probably. So why is Ramsey even on the bench? Just to make up the numbers maybe? I don't know. But the one thing you can say about that bench is you look at it and look, forget the goalkeeping situation for a minute. But McAllister and Chiesa and Robertson are probably the only 3 players he would probably realistically bring on. McAllister and Robertson are definite. Chiesa are maybe. The rest of them, Nioni and Ngamoa, Ramsey, Nallo, or whoever comes in to replace Szoboszlai, ain't going to get any minutes. They're just there to make up the numbers. They're just there to sit there and wear the tops and fill the numbers, aren't they? Which shows one of 2 things. One, Slot's arrogance against our young players. Nioni should be getting more minutes and Ngamoa should be getting more minutes because whenever Ngamoa's come on, he's never let us down and he's actually probably been one of our most effective wide players. And also how weak this squad actually is. You look at that bench and yes, I know we've got Frimpong, Isak missing and Bradley missing and, look, the squad would look a little bit stronger and Gomez is missing. Yes, we would look a lot stronger if we had those players. But, you contrast that with, say, Manchester City's bench or, even to some extent, you look at, you look at Manchester United's bench last night. They have actually more options on their bench than we do. Yoro, Sesko, who came on and scored, Mazraoui, Ugarte. Slightly few more options than even we have. Which is pretty sad. A sad state of affairs. Realistically looking at it. And then of course, you look at Arsenal. And you look at their bench and the experience that they've got on to bring on from their bench, and it's night and day. It's night and day, and I think it does show why Liverpool are really struggling this season, that the strength and depth is not there. This is Liverpool's bench, Arsenal's bench on Saturday. Hincapi, Eze, Martinelli, Gyökeres, Norgard, Mosquera, Ben White, Kepa, Mars Lewis, Skelly. All of those players would be in our squad, and a few of them would be in our starting lineup if they were Liverpool players. So it does show there's a big gap in terms of the strength of our squad. This season to last season, and I think the squad is fundamentally weaker than it was last season, and that's on Richard Hughes. That is solely on Richard. Right, guys, let's talk about another bit of story. Another story, obviously going around about Mo Salah. Salah allegedly is the subject of a transfer bid from Al Ittihad for the summer. The Saudis apparently are back in for Mo. The Saudis want Salah to come to the Saudi Pro League in the summer. It's apparently on the back of the fact that Cristiano Ronaldo has had a toddler strop, a toys out the pram strop, and he wants to leave Al Nassr because he can't win the Saudi Pro League with Al Nassr, and he's had a fallout with the Saudi investment fund that run the league, and apparently he wants out. So look, he like I said, he is a bit of a child anyway, Cristiano Ronaldo, but they then want, obviously, Salah to come in and be the face of the league, to take over from Ronaldo. Not that they're going to pay Salah anywhere near what they paid Ronaldo. Now, I honestly believe that Liverpool will, I think, cash in on Salah this summer. I think that was always the intention with the 2-year contract. That, he said, look, we'll give you a new contract. You'll have one more season. You can say goodbye to the fans properly at the end of that season, and then we get some money for you. I genuinely think Salah will be gone at the end of this season, which then, of course, begs the question, how do we replace him in the summer? Elise, probably the only player who can come in of a similar standard to replace Salah. But I think that is an interesting story that is going to run throughout the rest of this season and into the summer. But given, obviously, how this season's gone, the fallout between Salah and Slot, Salah's interview that he gave, where he publicly called out Slot and the club to some degree, talking about being let down, thrown under the bus, promises broken, etc. I think there's a strong likelihood that he will leave at the end of this season. Guys, let me know your thoughts on that one. Anyway, thank you for watching the Anfield Review podcast. As always, guys, if you've enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you very, very soon.